This is Living Awake. Hello world, how are you? It's Melanie, Fiona again, and we're back on Awake Radio. Thank you so much for tuning in today. It's all about navigating life's awakening moments and the moments that define us, I think, as people. And as you guys know, I always like to have a very special and personal guest on my show. This week, our topic is self-care. And what that means from a physical aspect and what that means from an emotional aspect. And I have the lovely Dr. Lindsey Mathews with me here, founder
Hi.
and creator of BirthFit. Say hello to the people.
Hello.
Yes. So Lindsey and I actually have a personal relationship because Lindsey was my birth educator, prenatal.
Yeah.
And then as well, BirthFit is a program that you started, which helps women through their pregnancies be fit and postpartum.
Yeah.
So I'll start setting the tone about self-care because I wanted you to have on, of course, self-care is a thing, I think, for all people, but it's mostly relevant to me right now because the issue of self-care has become more important than ever now that I have to be well for someone else. And becoming a mother has been the biggest change in my life. I'm sure you see this and hear this all the time from moms. So I thought it was important for my motherhood listeners and followers and supporters, as well as just people in general, to understand about self-care and what that means. So tell everyone what your journey has been to creating BirthFit and like what is the inspiration behind the self-care movement?
Sure. Well, I'll start with BirthFit is, I call it a movement. Just like you said, it's built on 4 pillars: fitness, nutrition, chiropractic, and mindset. And those 4 pillars came to me like as a foundation as to how I ended up like through self-journey, self-awareness, just creating my life, daily lives, like decisions, practices, habits, stuff like that. Yeah, I don't know. Do you want the full story or?
Yeah, give it to me. Where are you from?
So I was born and raised in Texas and Houston, Texas. We moved to a small town called New Braunfels, which is right outside of Austin. And I played soccer and was a cheerleader in high school.
So your fitness
foundation.
foundation.
So movement was a part of my life. I also had asthma growing up. So this was super challenging in that there was one year where I basically was in ICU for like a week, and it was a huge experience in my life. They told my parents I probably wouldn't make it through the night, that sort of thing.
Wow.
So when you're in ICU and like you're in and out of, I guess, consciousness, and you know, during those vivid dreams at that time, I saw people and like that I wanted to help, and you know, just I couldn't make out faces, but
Wow.
it was like an epiphany.
It
for
was an
me.
awakening moment.
Yeah, at that moment in my life, and I was, you know, just barely a teenager.
So this journey started for you young.
Yeah, and so I knew, like, my brother and sister are younger than me. They're twins, Taylor and Tyler.
Shout out to them.
Don't do that to your twins. But, you know, I saw them in the dream that whenever I was in the hospital, and I saw lots of other hands and people. I just couldn't make out any faces. And so I was like, okay, I'm not going to follow the light, you know, that sort of thing. I'm going to come back. Something was just pulling me back to the earth side. And so that kind of started it. And after that asthmatic experience in ICU, I was put on all these drugs, all these allergy shots, stuff like that, like just lots of steroids. And, you know, even at that time, my mom, who, you know, is very conservative, very religious, she's from the South, all she was exposed to was Western medicine. And so she started exploring like acupuncture, chiropractic, stuff like that. Cause she's like, hey, my baby's not dying on me, you know?
Right.
Like, let's not do that scare again.
Motherhood.
Yeah.
Amazing.
So she just started exposing me to all this alternative therapies. And for the most part, like I was on some medication daily, but also I would receive chiropractic and acupuncture probably once or twice a month through high school. And when I got to high school, I played soccer and I was a cheerleader, which is like big deal in Texas.
Right.
And I thought I wanted to play soccer in college, but I tore my ACL. So this was like the next big pivotal moment.
Wow.
And, I tore my ACL first football game, first week, whatever, of my junior year in high school. So I was out my whole junior soccer year. And there goes any scholarships, anything like you're thinking about. There goes your future as a teenager.
That's what you think. This is all I see. I know,
yeah,
right?
we're screwed.
Right.
Life's over. So like at that point, I remember, my mom taking me to 3 different orthos, orthopedic surgeons, and she was like, what was your thoughts on everybody? And I was like, well, I really like this guy, but he only told me I could be 80%. This other guy told me I could work really hard, but probably be at 100%. And she was like, well, what do you think? I was like, I can work really hard. Like, we can get back to 100%.
I can work really hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we went with the surgeon that was the furthest away, but at the time was like the San Antonio Spurs surgeon. So I was like, yes, let's do it.
Yeah.
He's the one that told me I had to work hard. And he was even adamant about chiropractic and alternative therapies. Even in his, like, this guy's an older, bigger guy, wears scrubs 24/7 and cowboy boots.
I love it. Texas.
So that kind of started my like, okay, like I gotta create habits. I gotta just show up every day. Even though, man, there were some days where I couldn't even straighten my leg, and it's like, okay, maybe we'll just breathe and move through range of motion today.
And so you feel like that was like your first introduction to physical self-care and how you could help yourself personally.
That and the asthma, and I was like, okay, if I'm not going to do this, nobody's going to do it for me or to me, Like, that was a terrible analogy, but my mom was like, nobody's going to wipe your own ass.
Yeah.
Like,
No,
that's
that's what it is. I mean, I feel like the older I get, I've started to learn the importance of taking care of your health, like first and foremost, because it's like, do I want to be a 65-year-old woman that needs people to help take care of her? She can't walk up the stairs, so I started changing eating habits, like, in my early 20s immediately, and I started to be open to that idea of like taking care of yourself, like from now, so that later it's a full process. It's like it's all full process. Connected.
It's wild how connected everything is, and like even in like as a kid, teenager, 20-year-old, you're pretty resilient.
Yeah, and you think you're invincible.
Indestructible.
You think you're invincible, and I'll say that, like I was saying this earlier on to a friend, that like having a child changed my whole perspective on what I didn't know my body could do, what I figured out what my body can do, and what now I feel I can do, which is anything. And so tell me about how BirthFit began and like where that passion for women and motherhood self-care came from that.
For sure. So I started my journey for PreMed based on like these 2 big experiences at Texas A&M, did PreMed route, and I was literally signed up, ready to go to medical school, and I decided to take a semester off, my last semester, and go to Africa. And I was like, I'm gonna do a medical mission trip there, just get some practice, like triaging, stuff like that. Like, hey, what are you in for? Let's take your vitals, that sort of thing. Like what they do in the emergency room.
Right.
And so I went to Africa, long story short, best place on earth.
Amazing.
We spent time in Tanzania, but we would hike all over, like Monday through Thursday, hike for an hour, go to like remote villages. And then on the weekends, we would have clinic. My last weekend there, this lady brought her son to me that was probably about 6 or 7 years old, and he had seizures. And I was like, okay, way over my head.
Right.
Like,
Never experienced
diagnosed
like that before.
seizures. Like, got it. Let me talk to the doc, see what's going on. So I talked to like the overseeing doctor, and at that time he just wanted to prescribe like a sedative, something just to like chill him out whenever the seizures were happening. And this mom thinks her son's possessed a little bit, like doesn't really know what's going on, and we're just gonna give her a pill.
Right.
Like,
exactly.
Okay, so me and the translator and the mom and the son went outside, and I was like, I don't know, God must have like just struck me down and said, hey, another awake moment.
Awakening moments.
Let's go. And so I brought him outside and I was like, look, your son's not possessed, but I was like, look, he's still sweet. He's responding. Like, he can hear us. He can communicate to us. The soul, like, inside, still the same. So at that moment, I found the only payphone in town, and I was like, not going to medical school. Like, this
So you made a call back home and was like,
yeah,
that's
it's like, I called my stepdad, and I was like, Steve, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm not going to medical school. And he was like, oh my God, well, you can't come home till you figure it out. Like, you got to pay for where you're going to live, that sort of thing.
So once that happened for you and you designed BirthFit, which I think is so important, because what BirthFit has done, and now mind you, I've been a part of the BirthFit program now, postpartum as well.
Yeah.
So I've experienced what you've created, prenatal and postnatal. Yeah. And I will say what BirthFit I think represents, which is so important, and what I think most women need, is a community to feel like they are supported by other women who are going through the same thing as them. And that is awesome. Like when I see the BirthFit postpartum class, and it's all these pregnant women, and we sit and how old is your baby, or how far along are you, or you know, all of the necessary questions is just something that comes from talking to other women about that. And so what do you think that is like a foundation for the self-care movement when it comes to women? Like when you're working with these women, like what do you think your main thing for them is, and what's your like main thing that you give them, you help to teach them?
I think the biggest thing is that, and this is so internal, is that they're worthy of it, you know, and that starts with the mind rather than physical anything.
Right.
You know, I think so many people don't value themselves enough, and, you know, in return, nobody around them is going to put value on them or what they do in life or anything like that.
Right.
So I think that it starts with the mind, and just, you know, you may not believe it day one, but, you know, just look in the mirror and say, like, I deserve this.
I deserve this.
Like, it just starts there.
A quote that I always like to share, a quote with people that I feel like is relative to what we're talking about. And I found one on self-care, and the self-care, it says, self-care is not selfish. You cannot serve from an empty vessel.
Yeah.
And that I think is what's so important for people to realize. Like one of the gifts that I've learned about self-care, and in all relationships, working, professional, personal, friend, whatever, is you cannot give what you don't have.
For sure.
So you have to take the time to be good to yourself and to be good to your body, to take care of yourself. And you know, I wanted you on here today because you've dedicated your life to doing that for yourself. Lindsey is like superwoman. You should see her do pull-ups and chin and deadlifts, and she's crazy with it. But also you inspire other women and people in just general to take care of their bodies. Which also, strong body, strong mind, vice versa.
Right.
So I think that's like, I'm so fascinated by, you know, people who dedicate their lives to really helping others improve theirs. And so
that's cool.
So thank you for that. Thank you for creating that community and doing that. And so, like, what do you feel is something that you would give, like if you could give advice to women, like through the process of postpartum, because if I could give a piece of advice, I think one thing that I would say is be patient with yourself.
Yes.
And I think that you've seen, like, I train and I'm always like, oh my God, this area is being stubborn and I don't know why. And you want to think that everything is just going to happen easily and naturally the way it is. And that's the biggest lesson I've learned in self-care is to be patient with myself, to forgive myself. Like, don't be hard on myself. So like, if you could, you know, say one piece of like advice, what would you think it would be to?
Oh, I think like there's a choice in everything. So I think, you know, as small as like what you're going to choose to eat first thing in the morning, or choose to eat at the Starbucks that's the only thing in the airport open. But I think our choices, our daily choices, create our habits, and then our habits, you know, create the practices, the journey, the life that we live. And I think having an openness to that journey, that process, is the biggest thing. Like, just put the wheels in motion and just see what happens. Awesome. Like, I think that's the biggest thing. And once you create those habits, that discipline, all the freedoms, they're on the other side of the hard mountain that you got to climb for 22 days maybe.
And for what, and right, and for whatever that mountain is for you in your life, whether that's pregnancy, motherhood, a job, a goal, anything. Absolutely.
And it's the process that is so rewarding. And I think that's part of the postpartum phase is so daunting for people because it's like, oh my God, I was this big or I weighed this much or whatever. And it's like, get all that stuff out of the front seat of the car.
Listen.
And just see what happens.
See what happens.
See what your body's capable of. See what kind of mom you can be.
Set new goals for yourself.
Yeah, for sure.
That's definitely one that I think that I've experienced is lose the noise. Take out the noise out of your own space because it's only getting in the way of you.
Yeah.
Of you.
For sure.
So I think that's great advice. And so whenever I have guests on the show, I always like to ask them 3 awakening questions. Because I feel like there's, don't worry, it's not hard. I just feel like the whole concept of awake is to recognize those moments. And you shared some of them with us where your health was in question, certain people that came into your life that opened you up to a new perspective, moments where you felt connected to God. Yeah. And that's what really the whole awake movement is about. So the first question I want to ask you is, do you have a life mantra or a rooted word that kind of keeps you on your driven path to bettering yourself and other people?
Well, as we've talked about, living kind of authentically yourself, your raw version of you. I think that's kind of the underlying message. And I have this shirt that says, just do you. And I would say that's the most important thing for me, because I believe my calling is, BirthFit, serving the world. I believe if you believe in God, that's what I believe in. I'm on this earth to serve people, and I'm going to do that till the day I die. Amazing. So it's kind of interesting you asked this at this moment because I've been doing regional director interviews for the past 2 weeks. So anybody that wants to be a BirthFit location, they do an interview with me, and it's a video, and it's an hour. And basically I sit down and talk to them and figure out okay, really what makes them tick. And are they passionate about the birth movement? Is it something that's a part of them? Or do they just want to put the letters on their door and say, I'm BirthFit, whatever.
Right.
Because that ain't going to happen.
No. Integrity.
Yeah.
Folks, integrity. Yeah.
And, I tell them, I want you to be living your true, authentic version of you. And if that parallels with BirthFit, awesome. And if it doesn't, then I'm still going to love you and support you because you're doing you.
Exactly.
And that's the most important thing.
Awesome. So I feel that. I totally feel that.
If it doesn't resonate in my gut and then it feels funny, then I'm okay, I'm out.
Yeah. Well, that's, listen, your gut is your guide. I fully believe that. The next question is, what makes you feel most awake?
Oh, man. So there's this great book, Flow. I don't know, Getting into Flow. I forget the actual title of it. And you've probably felt this, when you're singing and you're in the moment, and you're lost track of time, in it. Those are the life's purposes, journeys, those are the pearls of life that you try to get in.
Pearls of life,
or the waves of life that you try to ride.
Those moments, those little magical moments.
They could last for days, weeks, hours, minutes, whatever.
Seconds,
yeah.
But be in it.
Yeah. And so there's different things. I could be in the office treating for chiropractic, all day. My Friday mornings are usually jam-packed. I get in the zone. I start with meditation, a little movement, and then I'm there and it's moms, prenatal, postpartum, whatever. And I'm okay, my goal with each one of them is let's figure out how to make you do you better.
Right.
And by the end of that, I'm probably 20 minutes behind. Everybody's pissed, but they walk out a much happier version of themselves.
Listen, I'd rather be late and happy for sure.
But that and at the gym, just movement is life to me, and I think that's
is life.
Yeah. Just keep doing it.
That's good. That's awesome. And then I think you might have answered this, but what? The last question is, what do you do when you wake up first thing in the morning?
Well, very first thing is I have to feed my cat. She's
Angel.
She's 19 years old. If you don't feed her, she won't shut up. But I'll do that, and then water, apple cider vinegar, coffee.
Apple cider vinegar.
Yeah.
Apple cider vinegar. That's a little tip, folks. If you don't know about apple cider vinegar, self-care for the gut, again, which is also our compass.
Yeah.
Amazing. Okay, well, look, I want to thank you for like hanging out with me today and talking about this with me. Thank you for supporting me on my journey.
Dude, you're rocking it.
It's been awesome. And, you know, I just hope everyone who is listening to this and taking this in just understands that there are resources there out for you. This one is, you know, definitely specific for, obviously with BirthFit and postpartum, but there is self-care out there for you for anything you need care for. And I think that that's important. Your support system, your family, an important support system is really important too. So thank you for being a part of my support system. So before we get out of here, I want you to tell everybody where we can find BirthFit, find BirthFit and all of that.
Right. BirthFit.com. We're Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. I'm not very good at Twitter. But website, BirthFit.com.
I don't know if he's good at it, but he utilizes it.
And on there, you can go and find regional directors. We should be about 35 strong by 2017.
Nice. Congratulations. So we're growing.
We're growing.
Okay, guys, be sure to check out Lindsey.